Morning all, it's still morning. I hope you found the couple of videos so far entertaining today on pronunciation. And it was the two perk games which did it for me. Anyway, so this was one of the perk games that some of you wanted me to do a post-mortem analysis of. So it's probably one of the most unsound games I played on the 15-minute time control. So I was white, I put 2 pawns in the centre, good so far. Austrian attack with f4. I think one or two of you might have said this isn't perk, this is something else. That system with e5, which name escapes me. Not Fidador. Anyway, so whatever it is, so h6 is clearly asking for it with h6. I mean, what is this? Why not develop pieces? Why not, play knight f6, knight d5 if e5, So h6 is clearly asking for it, so there's provocation already. So knight f3, and then even more provocation to do knight df6. So, he's taking the mickey here, this opponent. So bishop d3 continuing development after e6. Okay, castles, knight e7. I was very optimistic here, and at the very least I can get a knight on e4. If I play e5 I get a nice pawn wedge on e5, and black's king safety should be suspect. So e5, getting that dangerous pawn wedge, getting a semi-open f-file, stretching the bishop out. This is a bad bishop, getting e4 for the knight. All of these trump cards should arise naturally. Some small concession, black's semi-open d-file pressure. That trump card of black can be squashed with a letter c3, leaving white with all the trump cards mentioned before. So he plays knight h7, and I play knight e4. Big deal about d4, still bad bishop. This can be neutralised, this pressure, and I've got the f-file, etc. So knight d5, c3, everything's okay so far. Bishop e7. Now time to anticipate black castling queenside, so this looks okay. I'm not engine checking this stuff. This looks to be a great position. But now he didn't castle, he played knight g5. So actually the fireworks begin here. And actually, I did actually manage to play a good move here after taking. This idea, bishop g5, is actually engine approved. The first move anyway, not the follow-up. Which is a disaster from an engine point of view, as we're about to find out. So bishop takes g5 is actually liked. Getting this knight into d6, using this f7 square somehow. So he took, so I played knight d6 check. Great so far. Now here's the first kind of mini disaster. How to take on f7. There was some weird calculation error. I was a bit knackered for this third game, I think, and some weird calculation error as I was getting a piece back. I can't even explain it. I don't know. I thought somehow my bishop was still on the board and I was taking on g5 after knight e7. So that's far from the truth here. Rook f7 does invite two defensive possibilities. Bishop e7 and knight e7. It's actually coming up as a strong move here. I want to just crawl this up so you see both lines. Rook f7 is still a strong move, even sacrificing a piece, but knight f7 is actually more incisive here at depth 17 with Houdini 2.0c. So knight takes f7. What happens here? Say check, king moves. So if we try, we've still got this nice fork, but not only that, the bishop's a liability for c4 later. So say the queen did move somewhere. Right, say it just goes to protect the rook, and then this happens, c4, which is the most incisive. And you might think, well, hang on, bishop f4 doesn't really help. g3, protected by the queen. Now two pieces are hanging. Can black attack this one with knight b4? No, queen takes b4 here. This is not going to work. Actually, this is now a mate in 2. So you can see from that knight f7 looks quite promising. What else for knight f7 instead of queen g8? Queen h4. again, we have a similar circumstance. Knight takes h8. So unless black wants to go rook down, the knight's coming out via g6. So queen takes and c4 as before. So it seems knight f7 is the first major tactic which I could have considered more carefully compared to rook takes f7 check. It seems pretty clear. There's a nice fork here of 3 major pieces, which are the most active actually pieces apart from this knight here. These guys are not really doing much here, this bishop and rook. So the fork seems pretty devastating actually. I hope you'll all agree on that. But coming back to the game, it's not all lost actually after rook takes f7. Okay, I'm a piece down, but how many pawns are we talking about? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 versus 3, 4, 5. 2 pawns. So how can he defend? He defends with knight e7, which apparently is the worst defense out of the two, bishop e7 and knight e7. So let's look at bishop e7. Why would white still have an advantage here? Apparently c4 is strong. Let's move the knight somewhere, say to b6, queen g3, and it seems, even though a piece down, it's up 3.76, about nearly 4 pawns worth. What's going on here? Let's protect that pawn. Queen g6, I'm not really sure what's going on, except e6 is under fire. No, there was another novel idea. Rook takes e7 if the queen moves, so that's pretty devastating because of queen f7 with a mate in 2. Not there, pardon me. Mate in 2 with takes and mating. Sorry, mating, whatever it was. So that's not hot for black, moving the queen here. So if the queen can't move here, alright, let's try rook e8. Actually, queen takes e6, queen sacrifice. What's going on here? Bishop f5, mate. Another point of queen g6. I wouldn't have seen any of this. Queen g6. It looks. So the king is dangerously. Has to play king c7. If queen e6 is a major threat here, then that's not good news. So rook e7 and queen c7. And if rook e8, queen e6, this is all good fun with the king in the centre. So queen e6 is the major threat on the horizon here. So actually that's why it's a really crushing position. We have our answer. Was there anything else to explore? King c7. What about king c7, you might ask? That looks like a logical move. Apparently here queen g5. That surely brings the king back. If it doesn't want to lose e7, let's imagine king d7. And now a quiet move or queen g6 again. Don't we just have a repetition after queen g6? So let's try rook c1 or rook a f1. Rook c1, why is this more powerful than rook a f1? Wouldn't that threaten nasties? So what does black do here? Black's tied up in knots here, can't move the king. These pieces are not particularly good. Rook on the 7th. What should we try? Rook f8. Rook takes g7. That controls g8 now. So black can't trade off pieces, can't move the queen. What happens to say queen c7 then? What happens there? Oh, the engine's shutting down now. Doesn't like this position. Okay, let's go with a6. What happens after a6? Bishop e4, and the threat is d5. Let's give rook a7, which is one of the moves weirdly suggested. d5, and things are starting to go wrong, I think, for the black king here. So let's look at king c7 first. Well, that loses the bishop. So let's just, I don't know, take this pawn. e6 check. And then if king c7, rook e7 is pretty crushing. If king d6, c5 check is pretty crushing, apparently. So the king being sort of in the centre without much protection is indeed a big factor. naked king running about. It's going to be checkmated pretty soon. Mate in 2 here. Okay, so this looks pretty dire for black, even though piece down, even with rook f7. So that's the first thing to clear up. So okay, so miscalculation error, piece down, but with king in the center, it still might even be technically lost, even with bishop e7. But knight e7 was played. Apparently I played another good move here, queen g3, which seems quite logical. I thought attacking the bishop, that was I think my main reason for queen g3. So the bishop moved to h6, and then we saw I played another good move somehow, rook af1, with the idea of just making sure rook f8 wasn't possible. I think you can check the exact ideas from the live commentary, but it does introduce a threat I totally missed. Remember, this bishop was protecting e7, which means docking computer forcing move considerations have to be made of rook e7 here again, because there's no bishop g5. So that's kind of interesting here. I had a one-time opportunity now after king c7, because otherwise bishop d7 is going to unpin that knight, to make use of that pin here. And yes, I don't know, maybe being tired you don't consider all the forcing moves if you're a bit tired or you move too quickly. It's a discipline, I suppose, useful. You're sort of treating an ordinary game position like a chess puzzle. But in a lot of situations in over the board chess, you haven't really got a winning position. But here it is a bit, I suppose, chess puzzle like, because we've got an exposed king here, and there's a pin element. There's a pin motif. There's a motive. What does Colombo say? Means, motive, and opportunity. There's a motive for the pin to be exploited. There's some weakness of the last move, and there's some forcing moves available, but there's an underlying pin motive as well, so that can actually be exploited. Of course, engine find that immediately. Rook takes e7, and this knight on d6 helps for rook f7, so that would be winning totally. Now, someone mentioned as though it wasn't. I think it is just totally over here. In fact, the rook would be lost here. No, it wouldn't be. Okay, so say we have this position. This looks fair enough, queen versus 2 rooks, but I've got 2 connected pass pawns here after queen takes h6. This is easier to play for white. I'm also 3 pawns up here, 5, 7 against 4. So this is more than 3 units worth, in fact. And when these pawns start going, and the pawn supported on g6, then that's really end of game, isn't it? So that's not going to be hard to play, particularly. There wasn't too much alternative here. Okay, so there's a docking computer failing. What about rook e8, you might ask? Here actually, instead of taking the queen, even stronger is apparently to take the rook first and then take the queen. Okay, not amazingly deep, that one. So there's not really much black can do here. Convincing enough? Okay, so that was a major error. So let's go back. So there's a bit of a comedy of errors so far this game. So I let him off the hook. I play c4, and the evaluation is now dropping like a stone for white, because black is a piece up and crawling away, it seems. The king going into safety. It's about equal now. Okay, so I play bishop d7 gives me the advantage again. Apparently black's best was to crawl out king b8, and then okay, bishop e4 a5. What's going on here? Rook a7. The king's going to go to a8 here, rather amusingly. Yes, goes to a8, and it still seems a fantastic position for white. A piece down. White controls the f file, a monster knight on d6, and these pieces don't look as though they're going anywhere fast. In fact, now engines even like this at depth 12. Rook f8. What's going on here? Exchanging pieces a piece down. So there's pressure say rook a6, rook f7, there's still pin pressure. And apparently in this position, for example, queen h4 is crushing, so that pin could be devastating. Let's just go here, out of interest. Bishop takes d4, queen e7 advantage. You know, once that pin re-emerges with that knight on d6, it's still trouble for black. So in the game, let's go back to the game, bishop d7, which was apparently blunder, and I played king h1, which wasn't the greatest move. Apparently bishop e4, that probably supports d5, I guess. So bishop e4, let's check that out. What does it do, bishop e4? So king b8. No, it's the other idea, which I think I did mention in live commentary, the queen coming over here. b3 or a3. In fact, a3 is also given as strong for some reason. Engine has no prejudice for coordinating pieces on b7 here. Queen a3, what is that doing, out of interest? So say bishop c8, a5, b4. What is b4 doing? Can black not just take? So there's, I don't know, what is the threat here, out of interest? Knight takes c8. Alright, and then there's coordination. Various coordination. Okay, so that's the sort of disaster that black might be facing with inaccurate play. But with rook a7, rook b1, there's coordination on b7. So even a piece down, just black's in knots again. Absolute knots here. Okay, so the move I played was not, well, the opponent didn't play that. Bishop d7, king h1. Okay, so I'm giving my opponent enough to sort of escape in theory, it seemed. Knight c8, and now d5 again. A strong move apparently from an engine point of view. It did seem tempting intuitively to rip open lines. Knight e7 was apparently the strongest move, but white's still better after taking on c6. And here this tactic again emerges with rook f7. So knight e7. Okay, so here we go again, another blunder. I played d takes e6. Apparently that's not the greatest move in the world. In fact, if we increase that, it's not mentioned, d takes e6. I thought I was trying to expose the pin. Apparently d takes c6 is mentioned, or bishop e4. D takes c6, queen g4. What's going on here? It seems just black's in real trouble all the time. Again, rook e7s. Once that bishop moves, there's rook e7s on the cards. Oh, you might wonder here, in fact, there's rook e7 immediately. So d5, okay, I play d takes e6, and again my opponent apparently, well, after knight takes f7, there was also, by the way, sorry, before going into that, there was also, this comes up as a strong move, just taking here is a strong move. So say king c8. Now this is advanced tactics. What's going on here? Rook takes d7, queen takes, d takes e6, and we're introducing this diagonal tactic now. So that's winning. There's no time for rook f8, you know, that'll be check, bishop e6, no time on the back row. So that's pretty crushing. So king c8's ruled out. So king b8, that's kind of ruled out as well. We're just on that diagonal still. It doesn't really help the black king. So say takes, d7 check is apparently a mate now, a forced mate. Well, that can be anything. And then queen c7. So that was another blunder then. So after knight takes d6, e takes d6 is absolutely crushing, it seems. But no, I played d takes e6, and now black's actually liked by the engine for the first time after knight takes f7. Bit of a comedy of errors this game. So rook takes f7. He plays a good move now, queen g5, and I was kind of thinking I fluffed this a little bit, well, a lot maybe. So anyway, I do play rook takes d7, and I do take on g5 to nab another pawn. So rook takes g7 is one of the stronger moves. Apparently bishop f5 here is also interesting with less than a pawn disadvantage. Now rook g7 is again the strongest now at this depth. So bishop f4, and I did play the strongest move, bishop f5, which is a bit trappy as well, of course. Now he should play not the howler he played, which was bishop e5, but he should play king b8 to get his king out of trouble. And here it's a lot more pleasant than before. He is a rook up. But surprisingly, for being a rook up, and this is my consideration during the game, this rook's kind of imprisoned here, and there are passed pawns, and surprisingly it's less than a pawn advantage, even if black takes on g3 here. It's a tricky position. We've got all this balance between a tricky position to play and playing the position all the time with most accurate, but even though black's a rook up, it's hard to get out of still. There's rook d8s on the cards. Maybe a5 is a disaster or something, or bishop g6 is going to force. I see bishop g6 is pretty nasty. Now you might ask, well, what about king c8? Still e8, and the bishop ends up protecting the rook on d7 with advantage actually. So bishop g6, that's why it's not so bad. Black has to give up the bishop then, in theory, as the best move. So it's just the exchange down, but even in this position there's a passed h pawn, so this potentially is easy to play for white. So even that continuation, even at the end. But no, he made a huge howler to finish off this completely tactically blunderful game. He played bishop takes e5. Actually, that's not a howler right now. It's after his move now that was a howler. He went to c7, allowing the discover check. Here, king b8 again is apparently going to be okay for black. No, this was the real howler. King c7, just allowing e8 discover check. And then there wasn't too many moves after that. Okay, so that was that fun game from yesterday. Some of you, for some reason, wanted a postmortem. It was a little bit entertaining. There's some tactics in there, and it shows that even I've reached 21-24 or above, which is ranked 60 now on the 15-minute auto pairing. You can see the number of errors in this game and still winning. So 15-minute chess is like a big 5-minute game. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.